Hey everybody, Daniel Gaines here. Just want to give everybody a quick little update. Court tomorrow for her bullshit restraining order. My response was filed earlier this week. Seems a bit excessive for a response to a restraining order at 229 pages, but what can you do? When you got proof, right? Court again next Wednesday, and after next Wednesday, that is the final venue I need to exhaust before I can file my federal action. And I can actually file, let me clear something up, I can file the federal action at any time because of state-like jurisdiction the entire time, and I've never been a resident, so at any time I could actually move it to the federal courts or file at the federal courts. But if I do, and I do it premature, the state of Washington's going to file asking that it either be dismissed or sent back to the state because I didn't try to have this addressed in the state and exhaust the different venues in the state. So to block the state of Washington from being able to get this sent back to the state courts and block them from being able to get this kicked or dismissed at the federal level, I don't have to, but I'm going to preempt all that by exhausting all these venues. And that's what the delay has been, is waiting on these venues to get these matters in court or to move these matters forward and everything else. Now that they've refused to address this, and they will tomorrow and again on Wednesday, it won't be addressed. Tomorrow they're going to end up ultimately throwing it out. Lack of evidence, lack of cause. But they're not going to do anything to her for her lies. They're not going to do anything for the underlying cause of all this, which is to try and prevent me from being able to establish any kind of contact or relationship with my daughter. They're not going to say a word about any of that, even though it's more than sufficiently proven. That'll all be ignored and overlooked. All the criminality will be ignored and overlooked. But the order itself will be denied. Once again, every one of them's been denied. She's never successfully gotten one. It's all bullshit lies, and the courts are aware of this. They just won't do anything about it, and that's why she keeps doing it. But that's what'll happen tomorrow. Wednesday's a bit of a toss-up. It's going to go one of two ways. Either the commissioner's going to find that the state did act without jurisdiction and, in fact, did violate their own precedent and everything else, and they're either going to give me back the money they've taken from me, and that's all they're going to want to address, or they're going to claim that they have jurisdiction, won't be able to legally cite anything, but they're going to claim it's a commissioner, so it's going to be corruption filled. But the commissioner's going to claim that they have jurisdiction, and that's why everything stays as it is, blah, blah, blah. Problem is, they have zero financial documents. She lies in her declaration and claims there's sufficient financial information, only there's zero evidence, zero information filed with this, literally, on a myriad of other legal issues and challenges. But they're either going to give me back my money, and that's the only thing they're going to address, or they're going to claim they have jurisdiction while unable to cite anything legally that gives them jurisdiction, to ignore the underlying issue because of the legal and civil ramifications it holds, and they're going to keep everything as it is. So those are the two things that are going to happen on Wednesday. I just don't know which one it's going to be. Based on my experiences with the courts and the corruption in the state of Washington, I'm forced to think it's going to be the latter of the two, whereas they'll have the evidence They will, again, alter the language of things, of my filing, to include something that's not included, or they will outright ignore the underlying legal issues to keep their criminality covered up and protected. So that's what I fully expect is going to happen tomorrow. Like I said, that's going to get tossed. There's not a chance in hell of that sticking. Hell, it's lacking any kind of fucking evidence whatsoever. But I know what Juliet's going to do on that too. Watch. Is what she's going to do is the same thing she did last time. She's going to wait until literally a few minutes before court to file any other evidence, thinking that she can get away with this because, well, these courts are biased and discriminate against men based on sex. Not going to work this time. It's going to get thrown out. That's a promise. But it don't matter, because either way, I don't really care about the outcome of either of these. Before the judge and commissioner respectively, judge tomorrow, commissioner Wednesday, before they make their rulings, I'm going to have already legally disqualified them. Which means any ruling they make is void and of no legal force or effect anyway. So it really don't matter to me what they do, what they say. It doesn't matter, it's not going to apply or be valid. So, I'm not gonna get into all the shit like I usually do. I'm not gonna be an ass like I usually am. There's no reason for it now. What I needed to accomplish is done on Wednesday. As such, the only thing left for me to do, let these court hearings finish, and then file this federal action. And that's what I aim to do. So for me, these next two are literally just a formality, just to check a fucking box. Satisfy venue requirements, let them refuse to address the underlying criminality and legal issues, and then they go from there. Because all these judges are going to be named. And then when the courts have no choice at the federal level but to issue a finding of guilt, since there will be criminal codes tied in with everything, they'll all be also found guilty of criminal conduct, which removes their judicial immunity under the 11th Amendment. So, these judges, commissioners, everybody else, nobody has immunity in this. Nobody. I've warned these motherfuckers that what they were doing was foolish, and that they were going to ultimately end up losing this game that they started to play. I begged for these people to follow the law and comply with the law. They refused. You don't force somebody who has spent more time learning than you will ever spend into a game of who knows more. You don't keep pushing somebody after you've literally given them nothing to lose. You don't keep pushing somebody when this entire time you've been unable, not that you haven't been able to, but that you cannot cite anything to justify your actions or get around what I've cited. Y'all know damn well ain't none of you's been able to tell me I'm wrong. Ain't none of you's been able to cite anything around what I cite. Not even Juliet's attorney, Stephen Downing. And watch what I'm gonna do with his ass at the federal level. Because wait till tonight, whenever I get working on this response to the child support matter and get it filed tomorrow. He is an attorney, Stephen Downing, is intentionally, knowingly filing documents signed under penalty of perjury that are fraud, that are perjured. He's knowingly and intentionally, with malice, filing these perjured documents and statements, all in an attempt to impact the outcome, which affects the judicial machinery and impacts the judicial machinery itself. So is what we have here is Stephen Downing engaging in another count of fraud upon the courts. And this is all going to be brought up. It's all going to be included in my federal filing. So when the state courts don't do anything about it, the federal courts are going to. And since fraud upon the court is a state and federal felony, this guy's fucked. He should for sure at least lose his law license. He should at least get fined. He's going to get sued. Let's see. I mean, I've got him for perjury. I've got him for fraud upon the court. I've got him for deprivation of rights. I've got him for concealment of material facts and statements. Ex parte, communications with commissioner and judges. Oh, see, these people just really don't know the extent of what I have. They don't understand that there's a few people on the inside who don't want to go to jail and don't want to be sued whenever I've got them on things. So they're helping, and I get information, I get facts, emails and such like that. There's always going to be somebody in the state that has a fucking moral compass and that has ethics. The problem is just finding them people is almost impossible, and it's very rare that it's going to happen. But when you got people over a barrel, some people are willing to comply to try and save their own ass. Because not everybody in the state of Washington, specifically Pierce County, is willing to go to jail or possibly go to jail or get sued individually and in the overall matter over other people's criminal conduct. And they forget these simple facts. They also forget just the sheer volume of emails and everything else, because they like to cherry pick them and only bring up certain ones. They like to leave out the exculpatory ones, like to leave out a lot of the material emails and everything else. They intentionally leave out their criminality, trying to get the state to engage in a malicious prosecution. Oh yeah, Stephen Downing and his goons still. But it's all coming back to Stephen Downing because he's part of it. One of the main parts, in fact. So yeah, these are all just some things I'm going to prove, and I'm still waiting for one of these motherfuckers to have me served with a lawsuit for slander or libel. I put this shit in writing. I put this shit on video. I put it out to the public. I give their fucking names. I call them out by name. Like, for example, Stephen Downing in Pierce County, Washington. He's been an attorney for over 35 fucking years. Steve Chili or some shit like that's his email. I've already put it out there before. Why ain't they coming after me for slander and libel? Why won't they? See, and again, it's one of the things, it's not that they won't, it's that they can't. Because for one, they know if they brought those suits, they would lose because they can't prove that it's slander, because slander has to be false statements and claims. And they know that I can prove this stuff, but they also know that if they do file it, it's going to cost them most likely because the countersuit. But then they also run the risk of losing their license to practice law, or their not being allowed to continue in their work in the case of Shelby Zamberlin and Jarrell Sanders, because of the nature of their work. So there's a lot of ramifications for these people bringing this. And that's why they won't, because they know they can't, because they know damn well that I can fucking thoroughly prove easily every one of my claims. And that's the real reason they won't bring anything against me, at least as far as slander and libel goes. Instead, they're going to try to get the state to engage in a malicious prosecution. But I'm going to beat that too, because I'm going to take it out of the state's hands and it's going to the federal courts. Because what caused it, what led into it, and everything else is already going to be a part of my federal lawsuit. This is all included. It was all by design and with intent for a specific purpose as I've stated many times, simply to check off venues to get the federal courts to where it can't be dismissed. And the state keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, and is what they're going to do is they're going to end up pushing to the point to where any settlement negotiations are off the table, completely off the fucking table, before this ever goes to court. And when they do that, they're fucked, because then every single one of them will be pulled into court. Every single one of them will be put under oath and questioned. Every one of them will sit for a sworn deposition, and that includes the Attorney General of the state of Washington. That includes all the judges and commissioners. That includes everybody. All legal. They'll have no choice. And then they got to take my questions while under oath. Questions from this asshole under oath related to all this shit. How do you think that's going to go for these people? Even with their attorneys, they're fucked. I'm going to catch them up multiple times. I'm going to get them to trap themselves to where they basically have to admit to their criminal conduct. And I'm still not going to settle, because they want to keep pushing. They want to keep ignoring the law. They want to keep making this a much bigger issue. They want to keep trying to engage in these malicious prosecutions and intentionally leaving out exculpatory evidence and information and material facts and all this. They're the ones who want to engage in all this criminality, when all I've wanted was the law to be complied with and upheld and followed. So, instead of allowing them to settle, I think it's at the point now to where the law just needs to be upheld to the fullest extent. And the only way for that to happen is to allow this to not only go to trial at the federal level, but to have it play out in its entirety at the federal level, with all the witnesses being pulled into the federal courts and everything else. I think that's about the only way I can allow this to die and rest, is for full accountability, since they want to keep pushing and playing and lying. Seems fair, right? The more they violate and ignore the law, the more I want the law fully complied with to the fullest extent. Seems like a fair and even balance. So that's what we'll do. They had options to have this dealt with. They still have 2 more chances. But they're not going to send it over for summary judgment. They're not going to send it over to have it looked at, to be addressed adequately. And even if they do, they're not going to address all of it in its entirety. They're going to run cover for the members of the judiciary and the assistant attorney general and DCYF, and they'll cop to, if they do it on their own, this is a very big fucking if, because this is one of the most, if not the most corrupt state in the fucking country when it comes to this shit. But the only thing they would cop to is not having jurisdiction and how things turned out, the results for that. Those are about the only things they're going to cop to. Whereas in the federal courts, I'm going to prove that they're guilty of so much more, including multiple violations of the RICO Act, for the way that they handle their child support, for the way that they handle their foster system, and everything else in the state. Because I can prove it's all in violation of the law, all done to the tune of deprivation of rights and conspiracy against rights. It's racketeering, extortion, bribery, and theft. Let's see. Racketeering is satisfied by the state getting money from the federal government, and the fact that there's multiple actors involved doing this together, so it satisfies the conspiracy element required to racketeering. You've got the extortion, because either you give us our money and do what we say, or you'll never get access to your kids again, which is also a cash for kids scheme, like in the state of Missouri, that they're looking into now and dealing with now in the state of Missouri. You have the bribery through the same means. If you ever want to have a relationship with your children, you have to do what we say. The deprivation of rights is, at least in my case, I was told that the orders they were using to establish dependency being void is irrelevant to the matter at hand. So basically, these documents that give us the legal authority to do this, the fact that they're not good, that doesn't matter. We still can have the authority because of these documents, even though they're not good and they're void. Literally what happened, I was told that it was irrelevant. So, having satisfied, and there's a lot more to it than that. That's just a very general, very brief overview. But those main elements, plus everything else that the state of Washington knows I can prove, I will more than satisfy every element and requirement needed to prove the RICO violations. And that's one of the things that's going to impact and hurt the state the most, because, not that it will, because it won't, but it could result in them being removed from these federal programs as a state. However, what realistically should happen is it should place both institutions in the state under a microscope from being overseen by the feds, federal court, federal agency, whatever the case is. It should oversee an investigation. The Fed should oversee an investigation into both of those organizations and agencies in the state to determine the extent of their criminal conduct and everything else. And if they find too much criminality, then that most likely will result in the state not only having to pay damages to every single person involved, but they will also have to pay a shit ton of money back to the federal government. They won't be eligible to receive federal funds for those programs and everything else. And that's just automatic because that's the way the laws are written. So that's my goal. My goal is to ensure that the state of Washington is not in a position to do this to anybody else. That's my concern. My concern is to make sure what these criminals have done to me, they can't do to anybody else. And that's what this is about. So, y'all have a good day. Just wanted to give you an update. Wasn't so quick. Sorry about that. Y'all know I get going sometimes. But yeah. Otherwise, love y'all. Have a good day. I'll have a video tomorrow of a court hearing. I don't know if it'll be video or audio. I don't know if it'll be through Zoom or just over the phone, but either way, I'll have a video I'll be posting tomorrow that'll have a court hearing, whether it's actually a video or an audio recording. I'll let y'all hear what happens. So yeah, stay tuned. See you tomorrow. Love y'all. Have a good day. Peace.